Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It is a full press NFL Sunday on a Saturday. That's right. We are sitting here Saturday afternoon. We got one game on tonight. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great way to wrap up the 2023 calendar year. And yeah, I'm ready to get rolling. How about you, Braden? I know we're doing this today for a reason because you're going to the Chiefs game. I'm curious though. I'm a superstitious guy, all right? And as many episodes as we have done, you have often had a red background. Now, I don't know if it's because you didn't want to blend in with the red shirt that you changed things up. You know, things would get a little bit awkward there. Do you feel a sense of concern that maybe you're messing up the mojo here a little bit? Although, again, maybe it's right to change things up considering how the Chiefs' December has been going so far. So, concerned at all? Are you a superstitious person at all?
I guess with the background, I kind of just this is the best I kind of could do today. But I would say some things I'm superstitious. I guess with just like game days, like certain clothing. I guess there's certain things I'll wear like every week. But that's kind of the biggest thing. But yeah, I still kind of working to confirm. I actually might be playing wide receiver for the Chiefs tomorrow.
Ah,
We'll see. Well, we'll see if I can hold on to it. But no, it's kind of a last minute thing, and figured I'd get to go to one this year. So we'll see if they can turn it around. But yeah, 3 straight losses at Arrowhead. Um, Probably lowest point of the Mahomes era so far. But it's going to be interesting to see what these AFC playoff fields look
mhm.
like, and just what the playoffs are going to look like in general. Because as we saw, Joe Flacco still dialing it up as we saw a couple nights ago, and it just seems like for the first time in a while, there's just very few teams that you maybe have full 100% confidence in entering the postseason. So it's a little different. Obviously, offense has been down this year too in general. So it just seems like kind of a more different year, and more just kind of shakier year, I guess, for a lot of teams than what we've been accustomed to lately.
Yeah, which could lead to a potentially great postseason because a couple weeks ago we were talking about the Bills being dead in the water, and quite frankly, they might be the scariest AFC team right now because of the fact, well, they're winning games, but they're beating really good teams, and I'm sitting here scratching my head because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago we're thinking, wow, the Bills 6-6. Maybe it's just maybe it's finally just not their it's not their year again, kind of like every other year, but this year in particular we kind of see it's over early, and then no, here they are knocking on the door, and they have a backdoor chance at taking the division if they win. Miami loses this week, and then obviously the division will come down to a showdown next week, which would be fascinating to see. But yeah, I mean, it's you go to Cleveland again, a team that was. I mean, I don't know how much confidence you had in them with Deshaun Watson. I think it was shaky. You were like, okay, their defense is really good, but offensively, they're hit or miss. It is what it is. Joe Flacco's come in, and he's just hucking the ball downfield, accumulating yards, and playing smart football for a team that's really talented. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, wow, is Cleveland now the team nobody wants to play going into the postseason? And it's crazy to think that, well, them and perhaps their NFC counterpart when it comes to perpetual losing, the Detroit Lions, who are in action later today, are two potential Super Bowl contenders, as crazy as it sounds, and as much as it just made me kind of throw up a little bit in my mouth. But no, it's crazy. And look, I mean, who's the MVP? I don't know. I mean, Lamar Jackson. I picked him before the season, so I'd be happy to be right in that situation. I think you can maybe make the case for a few people. I don't think Brock Purdy certainly didn't do himself any favors after last week's
Right.
performance. I don't think it should completely put him dead in the water considering the field. Um, but at this point, I mean, you go with Lamar Jackson. I'd be okay with that. Best, I guess, a team with you pick the quarterback and go with that. He's played really good football. I think I think people unfairly will look at one thing or the other when it should be looking at his whole game, not just one aspect of it. And I think, what he brings to the table inside the game, it's not necessarily always accounted for. So I think looking at just raw statistics with him is not necessarily a great tack. But I mean, he's right now the favorite for MVP. I mean, you could still probably throw Christian McCaffrey in there. Tyreek Hill, if he gets to 2,000 yards, I think is his only shot. Um, Josh Allen, I mean, again, they win. If the Bills win the AFC East, you can make a pretty strong case for him. And hell, I mean, why not? Because he leads the league in touchdowns. Obviously the turnover issue's kind of a problem, but I mean, there's several quarterbacks that have, including Patrick Mahomes, including some of these other good quarterbacks that have turned the ball over a lot this year. So it's not like he's outpacing those guys by a lot. It's just one of those years where we have a lot of options, and it's the across the board. I guess I feel like I keep saying we keep saying mediocrity, and I agree with it. It's kind of mediocre, and I don't necessarily mean this as like, wow, everyone sucks. It's just this season is, maybe it's a transitional year.
Right.
Maybe next year things, we start to see a little bit better football. But right now, I mean, for the most part, we've always had like kind of some clear cut MVP favorites. After this week, if Lamar Jackson has a bad week, if Josh Allen has a bad week, and Brock Purdy goes out and throws 6 touchdowns, well, guess what? People are going to be screaming to the mountaintops, well, Brock Purdy's the MVP next week. So it always makes these games very intriguing, though. I'd say that at least.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for me that I've always kind of liked about some guys winning the MVP, I think the wire to wire aspect needs to matter a bit. You and I both kind of thought Tom Brady should have won it in 2020.
Yeah.
I think the Aaron Rodgers win that year was kind of just propped up and built, really late in the season, kind of out of nowhere. And what everything happened with kind of what the one voter said. I think this year there's no true wire to wire aspect. McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill might be the closest to that, but of
Yeah.
course Tyreek missed that game. McCaffrey, it's so hard because of what people think about the running back position. He does so much in the passing game too. But yeah, I don't know if you really truly have that wire to wire aspect. The stats for some quarterbacks just aren't going to match what we've seen recently for some MVPs. So yeah, I think when you look at Josh Allen, like you said, he's probably the most interesting one to me because what 3 or 4 years in a row now of over 40 total touchdowns. Since the offensive coordinator changed to Joe Brady, he's been making it look a lot more simple.
Mhm.
He's making quicker decisions. So I would be I would not be surprised to see him win it. Honestly, if Buffalo is able to win this weekend in Miami and somehow win this division, I think his case is going to be at least the most fascinating to monitor over these next couple of weeks.
Well, and when you factor in, the reason I think a lot of people favor Lamar Jackson, despite I don't want to say a lesser stat line, because stats can be kind of meaningless
Yeah.
overall. Like again, I mean, as much as it's fun to watch. I don't consider myself a Mahomes hater. I think people have unfairly classified me as that. But I do get enjoyment watching Broncos fans and Chiefs fans argue over Russell Wilson and Mahomes' stat line. Like, yeah, of course, Mahomes, his stats are down this year, but it doesn't it doesn't make him the same quarterback as Russell Wilson. I mean, that's just foolish. Like it's to me, it's
Yeah.
like you can't like stats are nice and they're a good topping to a conversation and certainly have some validity to it. But I think there's just way too much importance being put on that. So to go back to Lamar Jackson and then ultimately Josh Allen, I think a lot of what people praise Lamar Jackson for is being a guy that the Ravens need to do just about everything. And it's true. I mean, the guy runs, he throws. I mean, outside, they didn't really have OBJ is I think his name's a little bit bigger than what his ability is right now. But like I look at Josh Allen the same way, and almost more so because he is doing more.
Hmm.
And the Bills, that's really all they have to do. Like it like they don't really have a running game. Stephon Diggs is a very good receiver, but again, I mean, you still need a quarterback to get him the ball, and Josh Allen is and look, and sometimes this is to his detriment, and this is his biggest flaw is that he still makes really dumb mistakes. And to me, that's really prevented him from truly being uh, that elite quarterback. Because as he gets close, it's like, wow, he does all these things, but then it's like just bad turnover after bad turnover, and he hasn't been doing that. Which there's a good reason why they're winning these games, and he's centerpiece of it. So yeah, I mean, if they win out the rest of the season, Miami loses this week, then they have a chance at the division, and why not him as MVP if everything stays the same? Again, there's no one that's been running away with it, and it's so like it could really sway next week. There could be a guy next week that no one's even talking about yet. Maybe Joe Flacco enters the MVP race because why the hell not? He comes in, he's just throwing 300 yards a game, off the street type of thing. Matt Stafford. I mean, I know it's not a real necessarily serious case, but like,
yeah,
he might, with the new voting way they do votes now, it's not like it was before. It's more closer to like MLB MVP voting. So 1 through 5, whatever. Maybe he gets a few votes, and hell, if they come on strong, I mean, he talk about a guy who's exceeded expectations and helped elevate that team. So again, it's a fascinating discussion. And it's in a different manner because we've had MVP races like 2021, and I agree with you. Obviously, I do think Brady should have won that MVP over Aaron Rodgers, but it was still a great race for kind of different reasons because we had 2 all-time great seasons by 2 of the all-time old guys. This is like, yeah, we're getting some good seasons, but it's just kind of a lot of pretty good seasons, and it gives us a lot to choose from, and it makes it hectic. And bettors might be a little bit losing it a little bit right now, but for now it's fun for us to talk about because it changes every week. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, look, I'm I'm okay with Lamar Jackson as a choice. I'd be okay with Josh Allen as a choice. I don't think Brock Purdy necessarily torpedoed his chances because and here's the here's the deal. You can make a case almost that it didn't help him, but it necessarily wasn't a bad thing because it kind of shows you that, well, despite all the talent that San Francisco has, if they don't get great quarterback play or very good quarterback play from Brock Purdy, they're not looking like that dominant team that everyone thinks is going to walk to a Super Bowl. And on top of that, considering the fact that Purdy had 8 interceptions coming into the week,
right.
and he threw. I mean, and again, you can make an argument that a couple of them weren't necessarily his fault. You can make an argument that throwing 50% of your season total interceptions is far more likely a fluke as opposed to a trend. So, do I think he torpedoed his chances? Absolutely not. Do I think it took a hit? Sure. I mean, you can't. Again, Brady got hit for that bad game against the Saints. Again, I don't want to rehash that MVP race. I have plenty of time left in my lifetime to do that over and over again. But it did hurt him, and I think this obviously hurt Brock Purdy, but I don't think it torpedoed his chances by any means. So anyways, we have a game tonight. We got Detroit, Dallas. Last week we had the what was it, the Cupcake Bowl, right? Between Miami and Dallas, and Dallas unfortunately was they came up short in the Cupcake Bowl. I don't know how much we learned about either of those teams other than, well, I still don't really trust Miami against teams over 500, nor do I trust the Cowboys against teams over 500. Doesn't mean that they're not capable of going out there and winning some games. I don't know. So, when it comes to tonight, this is Saturday. If you happen to be listening to this on a Sunday, we recorded this yesterday. But I'm looking at tonight's game, Detroit. I look at Detroit as having a pretty big advantage here. I mean, I know Dallas plays better at home, but I look at Detroit and like, they're one of the best teams in NFC, and so far Dallas is over against that. So
Yeah, I think going back to last week, like you said, what did we learn? I think either offense right now, we talked a lot about just offense, mattering a lot more to winning championships in this league in today's game. I feel like I still trust Miami's offense a little more. I know they didn't light up the scoreboard, but I think when you just look at how versatile this offense is compared to Dallas, I think Dallas is kind of missing that running game. I know Zeke Elliott isn't what he used to be, but it kind of seems like a move that, in retrospect, is one you maybe, if you're a Cowboys fan, wish you wouldn't have made. I know the contract was crazy, but kind of having that lack of physical runner, I think, is going to maybe cost Dallas in this playoff race. And you look at just I think the weapons as well. CD Lamb does so much. Jake Ferguson's obviously been a really good tight end coming into his own, but it seems like a Dallas group that's a lot more limited than I think what we were maybe aware of during kind of their hot run. So I think just looking at this offense, everything's of course going to be on Dak's shoulders. He's bounced back a little bit from last year, but it just seems like kind of an offense that very very little chances where you think they're going to kind of overcome some deficits. They had a long drive, obviously, to take the lead late in Miami, but just seems like right now kind of a group that doesn't maybe have all the X factors that you're looking for as far as an offense to really challenge some of these teams in the NFC playoff race. So we'll see if they prove me wrong, but it just seems like even with as much as Mike McCarthy's done, I think better than Kellen Moore at times this season. A Cowboys team that just seems perennially screwed, and they're kind of in the same boat to where they felt like, I guess, in the last couple of seasons.
and that's the thing is it going to be the Cowboys just over and over and over again? Is this what it's going to be? Or is it going to mean that Mike McCarthy gets the axe when, you know,
Hmm.
ultimately it's on the players? I mean, they
Yeah.
gotta perform. And like, we talked about again a couple weeks ago, Dak Prescott. We're like, oh my God, is Dak Prescott the MVP? And then immediately, he just ruined his chance because you started to give them the benefit of the doubt because at the end of the day, you can't help who you play. So as much as we hammer home that they haven't beat a team over 500, you can only play, but at a certain point when you year after year these same things pop up where it's like they show good tape, they're on, they look good going into the season and they have all this flash, it's Jerry World, it's the Cowboys, but at the end of the day it's still been over 30 years since they went to the NFC Championship game. Like Kansas City's been to 5 straight AFC Championship games. I mean, hell, the Patriots at the end of their run went to 8 straight. Like, I mean, you have Jacksonville has been to more
Right.
AFC Championship games in the last 20 years than Dallas has since they won. So, again, to me, it's Dallas. I'm not gonna. You really can't give them the benefit of the doubt, not only because they just haven't shown for a long period of time that their franchise is capable of getting over that hump, but even this season, it's like, yes, you want to believe in them, but when you sit there and talk about teams, sub 500 teams, sub 500 teams, they go out and guess what? They keep losing to those teams or over 500 teams. And I don't know. We'll see tonight. I mean, again, Dallas could go out and win by 40, and all of a sudden we got egg on our face, and people watching the show tomorrow on Sunday are like, these two, or particularly me, he's an idiot because clearly he should have believed in Dallas. But yeah, I just don't know if I do, and I don't know if I ever will until they actually do it. And I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, and it's kind of just like I kind of felt this. You kind of asked the big question, like when the Chiefs lost that Super Bowl to the Bucks. Kind of what's the biggest thing this team is lacking. I think the physicality was something that Kansas City really needed to add. After that Super Bowl loss, and it just kind of goes back to Dallas. The biggest thing that's missing to really get over that hump. I just don't know if they have kind of this physical tough style that you look at this NFC playoff field this year. Are you going to be able to match wits with Detroit in that area tonight? And and in the playoffs, if you meet there, we know what they've failed to do against San Francisco in that regard up front. So it just seems like some teams that are built on toughness right now are always going to give them some fits.
Yeah, and that's not a good thing going into the playoffs because that's not a good recipe for success. Um, So, all right, before we shift gears and start doing our picks and talking about some of these games, I do want to talk about the Russell Wilson stuff. Who,
Oh yeah.
look, I've spent, well, we both spent a lot of time on this show in particular, and some other shows that we do, talking about Russell Wilson over the last year and a half. And again, I'll sit here and I'll say, like, look, I'm not one of these people piling on him now. I mean, I've been kind of down on Russell Wilson since his last season with Seattle. There's tape to prove it. Trust me.
Mhm.
So this isn't necessarily shocking to me. Do I think he's being treated unfairly? Look, it's an unfortunate situation. I know some people have made comments like, hey, he's getting X amount of dollars, whatever. And there's other people have kind of turned this now into a racial thing. And quite frankly, I'm like, look, I feel bad for Russell Wilson. I mean, it's unfortunate this is all in the public eye, and I think that's what I feel bad about, because it's like no one, regardless of who you are, wants all this dirty laundry out in public. You'd much rather be a private person. But at the end of the day, his play didn't warrant the contract. It was a bad contract, bad trade from the get go. Everyone saw it happen. Last year's season was abysmal. Did he improve this year? Yes, but marginally. I know people are, like I said, we talked about earlier in the show. They were like, "Oh, look, he has the same numbers as Patrick Mahomes," and it's like, stop, like just relax here a little bit. And if there's any more proof about how numbers can ultimately be meaningless, that's a good example of it, because near identical stat line, but clearly if you watch, there's a far different impact. And like I said, I mean, Russell Wilson had a better season this year. There's enough poor quarterback play out there that he's going to land somewhere next year if he's a free agent, because I don't see how he comes back to Denver. And what can also be true is Sean Payton's kind of an asshole. I mean, that's what it is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think, do I feel bad for Russell Wilson? Like I said, I feel bad that the things are in the public eye. Do I feel bad that Sean Payton's yelling at him? No, he's a grown man who, look, quite frankly, makes a lot of money. And I've I've seen a lot of coaches yell a lot harder at other players. And I mean, just look to, I guess, college football for an example. And Dion has been very vocal,
Yeah.
very aggressive with his players, and it's been a more of a people have kind of lauded that, as opposed to looking at Sean Payton. Like I said, though, I mean, at the end of the day, Sean Payton's an asshole. I'm not saying he's not. I mean, he certainly could have and should have probably um, handled this a lot better than what he did. But at the end of the day, Russell Wilson's play has not warranted the contract. It is not something that's going to bring Denver into the future. So yeah, to me, it's a messy situation that I don't think anyone comes out of this looking good or bad. It's just, I think it just reaffirms like I said, how we feel about Sean Payton. I don't think anyone thought he wasn't this type of person before. And I think everyone's like, yeah, I feel bad for Russell Wilson, but he's not really playing to the level that you would like fight for that. Like, oh no, you have to keep Russell Wilson. It's like, oh no, Denver fans are like, oh man, poor Russell Wilson. Let's hope we don't take too much of a cap hit next year. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, and I think back to just, the offseason, there was some interviews with Sean Payton where, everyone was asking him about his belief in Russ and how much kind of that head coach quarterback combo really matters for turning a team around. And he actually kind of pivoted to just how much the, front office has to be in line with him and ownership. And that kind of stood out immediately. I think with this, I guess from a contract perspective, this is obviously going to be an unprecedented amount of dead cap money that they're going to take on, assuming they do release them like expected. But I think with this ownership group, it's a little bit different than what maybe some other ownership groups would be willing to do and how they can handle that. But yeah, just from the rumors of him wanting the Chargers job last offseason, and obviously the Chargers not moving on from Staley at that point, and just how he kind of talked about doing everything different than what they did last year. Just never seemed like he was fully aligned with Russell Wilson. So um, I will kind of commend Wilson for kind of talking to the media yesterday. those videos came out, he didn't really have to do that. So I thought that was a pretty professional thing to do. But in the end, I think Peyton's going to want what he wants and build the team the way he wants to build it, kind of similar to what he was able to do with the Saints. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of plan they have. I don't know if they fully know what it's going to be right now. I know he's kind of been high on Jarrett Stidham, but I would assume they could be a team that's likely to trade up in the draft. If they like maybe whoever the third quarterback is off the board, assuming Caleb Williams, Drake May still go pretty early. So I think Jaden Daniels from LSU, this year's Heisman winners, is a name to watch. JJ McCarthy out of Michigan, Bo Nix out of Oregon. I know some people don't think they're first round picks, but in the end, it's all about just finding the guy that you want to hitch the wagon to, so to speak. So I could see any of those guys being players that Peyton's a fan of. And if it's another veteran, I mean, Denver's kind of rode that train for so long since Peyton Manning retired. So I don't really know if they know what the plan is yet, but I think in the end it's like you said, just with Wilson's play, it's not too shocking to see them interested in moving on.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if you're Denver's ownership, I mean, you're clearly in Sean Payton's corner because you just hired the guy and you have far more of a chance of getting something out of him at this point than you do Russell Wilson, who is on the back half of his, or on the wrong end of his 30s, and certainly his play has kind of followed suit. And look, this is I brought it up on the weekly on FPC radio this week. It's kind of a cautionary tale, and this is something that I continue to try to hammer home to people that are fans of guys like Josh Allen and even to an extent Patrick Mahomes, that these mobile quarterbacks, literally your legs just got, I mean, Russell Wilson overnight. I mean, that first half of his last season in Seattle, he was a legitimate MVP candidate. And he just fell off. And we've seen the second half of that year, he got a little bit of benefit of the doubt because he was injured, but I think we can surmise now that it was more so just a kind of a drop off in ability. And I think his ability was a bit overrated to begin with. And then when his physical ability starts to dwindle a little bit, and we've seen it, he's not that as explosive of a, he was never really necessarily a runner, but he was really quick on these bootlegs and the ability to kind of shift the field one way or the other, and obviously throw a great deep ball. That was, in my opinion, his very best part of his ability. He hasn't really had the legs, and when your game is really predicated on using your legs outside of the pocket, that's a tough hurdle to overcome, and we've seen that from a lot of physical running back type quarterbacks. And I'm not saying that they're better running backs than quarterbacks. I'm just saying, like, if you cannot learn to evolve and adjust away from that, by the time you hit your 30s, you're going to start seeing a pretty steep decline because you're not necessarily equipped or ready enough to take that over. Like I say that with Josh Allen maybe might have like this like really high peak, but if he keeps playing the way he's playing, he's not going to have a necessarily long career. And the last couple of years of that career might be really, really ugly if he follows the same pattern that most physically gifted, so to speak, quarterbacks follow. And that is, well, once your legs go, you better hope that your mental part of your game is ready to adapt and figure out how to play more. So I do say somewhat of a cautionary tale looking at Russell Wilson, who, certainly wasn't the best quarterback in the league at any point in his career, but he was certainly talked about among some of the best. And we've seen kind of that fall off come pretty quickly. So, yeah. So anyways, let's do our picks. We already talked about Detroit and Dallas, but I'm going to pick Detroit in this one. Like I said, I have far more trust in Detroit, and even Detroit's not necessarily a team that I'm willing to go throw down a bunch of money on and bet to win the Super Bowl. But when it comes to Detroit versus Dallas, I am 100% trusting Detroit more in this situation. I hope that after winning the division or clinching the division last week, this isn't a bit of a letdown because, well, they are still fighting for that number one seed, but who knows? Maybe you get a little comfortable knowing that you're already division champ. So I'll take Detroit in this one, though.
I went Dallas. This was one where it was kind of a toss up to me. I think I kind of favored Dallas being at home. Detroit, like you said, maybe coming off an emotional game. I think this is one that it will come down to the wire, but it just seems like maybe in this topsy turvy year we've had, it seems like Dallas may be due for a bounce back. So I wouldn't mind seeing Detroit win, but I'll go with Dallas here.
Next, we have the Raiders heading to Indianapolis. I got the Raiders. They're coming off a big win. They've played really well under Antonio Pierce. I think they're going to have to do a little bit more than throw 3 passes in the second half of the game. But I do like the Raiders in this one. And look, I think it would be foolish of them not to hire Antonio Pierce as their head. I almost said Antonio Brown. That would have been foolish. We saw how that arena football team handled his arrival there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's kind of the point. Check it out. It was very short lived. But anyways, I'll take the Raiders in this one. Like I said, I like what they've been doing under Pierce, and I think that momentum kind of carries through against a okay team, one that's still fighting for a spot, but certainly not good enough in my opinion.
Yeah, I went with the Colts on this one. I really kind of struggled with this pick as well. There was a lot of them I did this week, but I think the Colts are able to probably cash in a little bit more on offense with some scoring opportunities at this point. Jonathan Taylor being back, I think certainly helps that. So I'm going to go with the Colts in this one.
All right, next we have the Falcons heading to Chicago. I'm going to take the Bears. Justin Fields has been playing some good football. This team has started to, really, when Montez Sweat has been a really nice addition to the Chicago defense, and it's really kind of started to give them more of an identity, not solely because of him, but it kind of fills in some gaps. And all of a sudden you have a team that's performing pretty well with their young quarterback and is probably poised to pick first overall because they made that trade with Carolina, and Carolina stinks. So, I like Chicago in this one at home. So good for them.
Yeah, I like Chicago as well. I think just a longer stretch of recent play that you can kind of point to. I know Atlanta got a big win last week, but Taylor Heineke, I think in games that he's been appearing in over the last few years is like at least tops or close to it in turnover worthy plays. And you mentioned the defense with Montez Sweat starting to kind of really get something going there. So I think it'll be a long day for an offense like that that's kind of inconsistent. And Atlanta just 2-5 on the road. They're just such a different team right now under Arthur Smith when they got to travel. So I got to go with the Bears here.
All right, next, I just trashed on Carolina, but trust me, I wish I could have picked them in this one because they're going to Jacksonville, and yeah, it's Jacksonville to me is just a sinking ship right now, in my opinion, regardless of Trevor Lawrence's health. Um, but since they're going up against Carolina, I'm just obligated to pick whoever's going up against Carolina to win this game. But trust me, this is not going to be impressive or any sort of, oh, thank God, it's okay. We're okay for Jaguars fans. It's a sinking ship, but this is the point where maybe the ship kind of bobs up out of the water a little bit, and you get one more gasp of air before it ultimately sinks down. This is that. So I'll take Jacksonville, but I want to take Carolina so bad.
Yeah, I actually went with Carolina. It was kind of just, a why not kind of pick with Jacksonville's skid. I think I didn't think I'd really pick the Panthers to win any more games this year, but this seems like as good of a chance as any with just I think their defense has found some bright spots here and there under interim head coach Chris Tabor, and then you add in CJ Beathard. Travis Etienne's kind of been on a downturn as well, not really producing much from the running game. So I'm going to go with the Carolina upset for probably their best chance to get another win here down the stretch.
I wish I was bold like that. I've already said it twice, so I can't switch now. But anyways, next we have Tampa Bay hosting New Orleans, and the Buccaneers, one of the surprising teams, looking to kind of keep barreling towards the playoffs. I'm taking the Buccaneers. There's no reason why against in my opinion, a bad Saints team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Buccaneers. I had them last in this division going into the year, so it's been good to see them, fight the way they have, and obviously chance to win the division this week. I think they're going to get it done. Don't really think Baker Mayfield's going to be denied that starting job next year, as we kind of talked about recently. So I think he's going to have another big day against New Orleans.
All right, next Philadelphia hosting Arizona, and this is another one where I almost went with Arizona. I almost said, hey, kind of what the hell? Why not? Let's just pick the upset. I did go with Philly, but I've been asking the question too, and maybe this was a mistake on our part. Maybe we didn't see it coming, but we talked about that Pittsburgh team from a few years ago that started 10-0, and no one believed in them. And, like, I don't even think power rankings had them number one, even though they were the only undefeated team. Like, literally, no one believed that they were as good as they were. Maybe we should have been feeling that same way about Philadelphia all season, because I've certainly been guilty of giving them the benefit of the doubt. And it's always been like, no, no, they're going to kind of figure it out. Well, it's week 17. They haven't figured it out. I think a pretty good team, but you look at the point differential and it's like, man, the margin of error for this team is just so slim, and you're not getting the great quarterback play you did last year from Jalen Hurts. The defense, the secondary has been bad. Um, yeah, just a lot of things not going great in Philadelphia, and this could be a classic example of a team limping into the playoffs. And it wouldn't shock me if they might become an early exit when at one point we thought they were the NFC clear favorite. So, anyways, I will take Philadelphia in this one, but like I said, I would not be surprised if Arizona gives them a fight and potentially even, you know, has an upset.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Went with Philadelphia. I think it's always going to be, if they're able to win games here these last 2 weeks, kind of a yeah, but conversation. I don't think anyone's going to believe them to be kind of a big threat, like you said. And it's kind of, we talk about Super Bowl winning teams having Super Bowl hangovers. I don't think some people realize how much Super Bowl losers can have the same hangover as well sometimes. So it just seems like from the start of the year, Jalen Hurts was never really playing at the same level we saw at points last season. And right now he's kind of, I think the biggest thing is his eyes are down. You're seeing him kind of worry about the pass rush a little bit more than we've seen him do in the past, and obviously leading to some ill-advised throws. And yeah, the defense is just, I think talking to a lot of Eagles fans, they're just ready to get to the offseason and see what kind of moves they're able to make there. So I'm going to pick the Eagles, but yeah, it's definitely a team that gives you a little confidence right now.
All right, next San Francisco at Washington. San Francisco, I think they bounce back pretty well against a bad Washington team. I really, like I said earlier too. Four interceptions from Brock Purdy. That's based on his entire career. That looks to me to be far more just a blip, as opposed to a trend. So I don't ever expect that to see that again. I think San Francisco rolls.
Yeah, I think San Francisco rolls as well. Would not surprise me if they get back to having a 40 burger like they did a couple few weeks ago. So this could be a 40 to 50 point win, and it wouldn't shock me.
Next, the Rams heading to the Giants. Again, I'll take the Rams, playing really good football. Matthew Stafford's playing great. This offense is rolling, and the Giants stink. Going to their fourth quarterback now. Tommy DeVito's
Yeah.
a little upset that, well, surprise, surprise, they moved on from a third string quarterback because, well, he just wasn't playing well. So that's tough break, kid. So, but I'll take the Rams in this one.
Yeah, I'll go with the Rams as well. Stafford's obviously playing really well. I think Kyron Williams is going to be a huge piece for this team as far as threatening some other top teams in the NFC come playoff time. He's having a really good year. So, and I think the way the Rams have rebuilt the trenches, obviously that's not something that's going to garner much headlines. But this was a horrible offensive line last year.
Mhm.
They've really not given up much sacks recently. I think that's going to be huge for them come playoff time. So I like the Rams here.
All right, next, New England heading to Buffalo. And as much as I'd love to see Buffalo fall twice to New England this season, I don't think it's going to happen. I think New England they'll give them a fight. I mean, like they do pretty much every team, but eventually I think Buffalo is going to I just think they're playing better football right now than they were the last time these two teams met. So I like Buffalo at home in this one.
Yeah, I like Buffalo as well. I think being at home is also huge, obviously, for matchup to avoid a potential letdown against a feisty New England team. So just seems like at home compared to the road, they're in a much more clear groove right now. So I think they'll have a big day again on Sunday.
All right, next Tennessee at Houston. Unfortunately for Houston, you lose C.J. Stroud for a few weeks, Tank Dell's down for a few weeks, and their kind of momentum has kind of fizzled out here. I still, all things being equal, I thought they were the best team in the AFC South. Jacksonville is doing nothing but help prove that point, assuming Houston was healthy, but they're not. And I know C.J. Stroud was cleared for a concussion protocol, and I technically made this pick before I knew that. So I did go with, Tennessee. Um, but again, I mean, if CJ Stroud's out there, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm wrong on that one. So,
Yeah, I went Houston as well. Stroud back. Also looks like Will Levis is going to be back for Tennessee, so that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. I went with Texans here just because I think getting Stroud back, like you said, is going to just
mhm.
be a big momentum boost, and I think Houston, knowing they got the Colts next week, could honestly be a winner take all game for the AFC South. So I think Texans are going to kind of rise up to the moment here.
All right, next Miami at Baltimore. Miami obviously coming off that big win against the Cowboys, but heading on the road to Baltimore, I like Baltimore in this one. I think they're gonna figure out how to kind of keep Miami's offense in check, and they're gonna do what they do on offense, and I think they're gonna again kind of pretty much clinch up that number one seed in the AFC.
Yeah, Baltimore, they've actually lost twice already to Tua, which is kind of interesting. So definitely looking for some revenge here. And Baltimore, we've seen some people in the media kind of question them and call them out. I think this is the kind of team that thrives off of that, building those chips on the shoulder and really kind of looking to prove people wrong. It's just always kind of been something the Ravens have been able to do. And big games like this, they've been able to show up more than most teams this year. So I got to go with the Ravens.
All right, Pittsburgh at Seattle, a rematch of Super Bowl 40. Yes, Super Bowl 40. I like the Steelers. I like their defense, I guess, so I'll go with them on the road. That's really all I got.
Yeah, definitely a toss up. I mean, I think the Mike Tomlin streak of winning seasons is it's tough for me to want to pick against him here because of that because I think he's still maybe going to be able to find a way to do it, but in the end, I couldn't trust this Pittsburgh roster. I know they had a big win last week, but Seattle's had I think a more believable last couple of weeks, so I went with the Seahawks here.
All right, next we have boom boom the game you will be at, which was by far a more marquee game earlier in their season when, well, we thought Kansas City would be Kansas City and Cincinnati would actually have Joe Burrow. Well, Kansas City's defense is great. Their offense, not so much. Cincinnati, no Joe Burrow, but somehow they've still won some games. So who knows? I mean, this might actually be a very fascinating matchup between these two
Yeah.
teams. I picked the Raiders last week, and I was very happy with that. This week, I am not picking against Kansas City. I do have Kansas City at home. I think they get over this hump, losing a few games in a row at Arrowhead. Cincinnati. I think they put it together, but I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's no sure thing against this Bengals team that can still
No.
play without Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, as bad as Jake Browning was last week, he was kind of delivering it kind of cool, calm, and collected there for a few weeks. So yeah, definitely, nothing's going to be easy for this Chiefs team. Bengals have actually kind of been really good against them in the really last 20 years. I think they're 9-4 against Kansas City, including the playoffs the last 13. So this has kind of been a team that has given the Chiefs some fits for a while. But in the end, I just think given how much the Bengals defense has struggled at times, I think there's going to be some opportunities for Mahomes and maybe some of these pass catchers to kind of get going a little bit. I still think it'll be a tight game, but coming off the loss they did last week, I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs in this one.
All right, and the quarterback matchup of the day, obviously, Jarrett Stidham for the Broncos and Easton Stick. Um, What? I mean, the kid should have played hockey. I mean, let's be honest. I
Yeah.
mean, every time I hear that name, it's like, come on, like really, really. I mean, you should have got thrown the skates on. Maybe you'd be out there playing pro as opposed to being a fill-in backup right now. But nonetheless, quite the matchup. I'll take the Chargers. Again, I think Denver is if they weren't capable of winning before, I think this whole drama, if anything, the worst thing to come out of this whole drama is probably it negatively affects some of the other players on the team. Because I'm sure there's some people that are pro Russ and maybe some people that are okay with this situation, but I think it's a distraction nonetheless. So if anything, I think the Chargers take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's kind of the reverse Carolina pick to me. I wanted to go Chargers here, but in the end, I don't know what it was, just couldn't do it. So I went Denver in this one. I think really it just comes down, I think, to what defense is able to make more stops. As much as they've struggled at times lately, I would still take Denver's D over the Chargers right now. So definitely a toss up, but I'll go with Denver.
All right, Green Bay at Minnesota to end the week and end 2023. I like Green Bay. This is a team that's really had kind of a roller coaster season. Started pretty strong, kind of leveled out a little bit, and then they've really started to come on as of late. Jordan Love's played some pretty good football, and Minnesota is. They've been kind of grinding away since they lost Kirk Cousins, but I still like Green Bay in this one on the road.
Yeah, this one I really had no idea. I kind of just I if I had a coin right now, I would honestly probably flip it and just go with what it said. But I went with Minnesota on this one. I think Green Bay, just their defense, they've given up so much the last few weeks. I know they were able to hold on in Carolina, but one of the biggest days Panthers offense has had. Jaron Hall just his second start, but I think with some of the weapons around him, he can make it work. So I'll go with the Vikings.
There you have it, folks. Thank you, everyone, for listening, watching, dealing with us. Like I said, we will certainly be back next week to wrap up the rest of the regular season, and it'll be our first episode in 2024. So thank you once again for everyone tuning in all year long and everything like that. And we will be looking forward to seeing you in the new year. So thank you, everyone. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you next week.